everyone, it's Kendall here. If you're new around here, welcome. If you're not new around here, what is up? Home skillet biscuit. So the world is ending. This year has been truly, I don't want to say the worst of my life. It's a close second and it's only March. I feel like since the apocalypse is pending, I feel as though why end on a sour note? If you're new around here, it's Saturday, and Saturday is when I generally do something called Bad Movies in a Beat, the series where I talk about bad movies while putting my makeup on. But this week, I wanted to end on a positive note. Not end. Presuming we end. Wanted to end on a positive note. Today we're going to talk about a good movie. One of my favorite movies, if not my favorite movies ever. Because I do get a lot of you guys asking me like, hey, do you like any movies? So today, that's what we're gonna talk about. A movie that I really like. So sit down, relax. It's gonna be a fun time as I gush. Tim Burton's Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street. The irony, I'm talking about a good movie, which you would think would be a positive thing to do. And it's probably the darkest movie I've talked about on this series. Last week, though, we talked about Ninja Assassin, a movie that we all make excuses for till this day. Y'all don't have to accept the truth, but it's there. I had so many people like, no, Kendall, I liked this movie. If you haven't seen that video or any of the other videos in these here Bad Movies in a Beat, you can check that out up above, or you can check it out in the Bad Movies in a Beat playlist. So yes, I have had a lot of people say, hey Kendall, when are you gonna do a movie that you actually like? What movies do you actually like? Name some of your favorites. Let me just be very honest with you. I'm a lot less likely to watch a good movie than I am to watch a bad movie because they're just fun. Today, we are talking about Tim Burton's adaptation of the 1979 Broadway play. This movie has been one of my favorite, if not my favorite movie, since I was too young to be watching this movie, because that's when I watched it. Directed by Tim Burton, and if you know any Tim Burton films, then you kind of can guess the style. Gray, Victorian, everyone kind of looks like a skull. And that vibe fits perfectly with the grody, grimy, industrial setting of Victorian London. The film uses many of the same scores that was in the musical, which were composed by Stephen Sondheim. But this time in this movie, the performers are not professional singers. It's the actors, Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter. The way I talk about this film, you'd think that I'm really into musicals, and actually quite the opposite. I hate musicals. I can do a little Disney Renaissance, anything from the late 80s into the early 2000s, but if it's like real people singing and dancing, can't stand it. Largely, the reason why I like this movie so much is that it's like an anti-musical musical. Like nothing's happy, no one dances really. Everything is kind of ugly. Everything is just really bloody and unfortunate. I chose this movie to be positive. I don't know. I've always found the musicals are really corny and hard to connect to. And I think what's interesting is that because it kind of strips away all of the things that are generally in musicals, the high energy, the romantic nature, the prettiness that musicals usually have. Wow, I'm getting really under there. And instead turns it into something that's really industrial and kind of gross to look at. And I mess with that. Now, I will start off by saying I will not sit here and assume that this movie will be everyone's cup of tea. The movie is very violent and it's very bloody, and it's a musical. Also, in many ways, quite slow paced, even though it is a musical. Sometimes more upbeat music, but it's still gray and depressing. I get that. It won't be everyone's thing, but it's always been my thing. I've been really into it. The story begins with Sweeney Todd, played by Johnny Depp. Sweeney Todd is returning to London after being exiled for a crime that he did not commit. Before he was exiled, his name was actually Benjamin Barker, and he lived as a kind barber on Fleet Street. He had a beautiful wife and a newborn daughter. A corrupt judge in the area named Judge Turpin saw Benjamin Barker, or Sweeney Todd's wife, and decided that he wanted her for himself. So he decided to drum up a false charge. I don't think we ever figure out what it is, doesn't matter, that exiles then Benjamin Barker away from London. And now Benjamin Barker has returned from his exilation, his time away, now going by the name of Sweeney Todd after being saved by a young sailor by the name of Anthony. That's just real British for Anthony. Anthony is the dude from New Moon. We're not going to even say that you were in that movie going forward. This is your crowning achievement, sir. nope, this is it. This is all you're known for. And Sweeney Todd is back in London, ready. I said London. Sweeney Todd is back in London, ready to enact revenge on Judge Turpin, who is played by the late Alan Rickman. Rest in peace. It's hard to look at y'all and do the under eye. Sorry. Todd returns to his old vacant barbershop parlor that sits atop a bakery. And in that bakery is where he meets Mrs. Lovett. Mrs. Lovett, played by Helena Bonham Carter. Mrs. Lovett is the owner of a failing bake shop where she makes, quote, the worst pies in London. She has a very comically ill-placed, jaunty tune about how everything is falling apart around her and how her business is in the gutter. During her opening number, she makes a little quip. Is that what I want to call it? She remarks about how there's a nearby woman in the neighborhood who's been using cats in her meat pies because the price of meat is so expensive these days. And she's like, I would never do that, only because I couldn't catch them. This sounds like a stupid thing to bring up, but it's kind of important. Not really that important, but it's kind of funny later. Todd asks why Mrs. Lovett isn't renting out the space above her meat pie emporium, so to speak. And she said it's because it's haunted up there, or people say it's haunted, because there was a barber that lived up there. Him and his wife and daughter lived a very tragic life. And Todd is saying, well, what happened to the wife? Whatever happened to her? And basically, Judge Turpin came by every day sending her flowers, waiting for her to accept his proposal, and she refused. And so one day, the judge invited her over to a masquerade party where she is presumably assaulted, after which she is distraught and poisons herself.
Would no one have mercy on her?
So is you, Benjamin.
I was only doing this eye look for, drama and story continuity, but now I'm kind of feeling it. Judge Turpin has since adopted the daughter as his own, and eventually we'll find out throughout the movie plans to marry her to stop other men from looking at her, because he's freaking insane. Now cemented in his rightful righteous anger, he is now fully souped up, ready to get his revenge on Judge Turpin. Meanwhile, Anthony gets a glimpse of Joanna up in her tower, so to speak, and falls in love with her instantly because he's a stupid boy. But he falls in love with her, and he's kind of glancing at her, looking at how sad she is in the window. She sings Greenfinch and Linnetbud, Nightingale, Blackbird, how is it you sing? And Anthony is like, wow, I want her to be mine. As he ganders at Joanna, the judge catches him and sends him off with a very painful warning that he cannot look at her in that way ever again. He sics his henchman, the Beetle Bamford, on him to beat the crap out of him and sends Anthony on his way. He's like, oh, I want her even more because we love a masochist. And he's like, I've resolved to now steal Joanna from her tower. Did I explain why he knows Joanna's name? That's because he ended up meeting a beggar woman on the street. Kind of a weaving character throughout the story. She issues small tidbits of information. She is kind of the ironic placement, the crazy woman that knows everything. So she's the one that actually tells him who she is, what's her name, what's her story, don't go bothering her. She will also be quite important throughout the story. So Todd has moved back into his barbershop, and he wants customers, as you would. So what he decides to do is go to the town square with Mrs. Lovett to attract new customers to his barbershop. There, he sees a small boy named Toby who's peddling an elixir made out of piss and ink, and he's selling it to the masses saying it's a hair elixir. The maker of said hair elixir is a man named Pirelli, an Italian man who's a big, showy, verbose, bombastic barber, a lot of show, a lot of gusto. He's played by the dude that played Borat. I forget what his name is. Todd challenges Pirelli to kind of a barber off to garner the attention of the men in the nearby area and to make sure that he is actually the barber that everyone goes to now. Todd wins in a flourish, resulting in everyone, including Judge Turpin's henchman, the Beetle Bamford, being interested in his particular services as a barber. Like I said, the Beetle Bamford is the judge's henchman, right? Beetle tells Todd that they will be at his barbershop before the week is out. And Todd is ready. He's like, 15 years. I can finally kill these dudes. I can finally enact my revenge. You always gotta ask, what happens after you enact revenge? Like, what, what do you do now? Mrs. Lovett is like, hey, relax, chill, plan, savor this moment. You've been waiting for 15 years, savor it. You know, half the fun is to plan the plan. Don't get sloppy, don't get rushed. Wait. While mulling over how he'll go about killing Judge Turpin and the Beetle, Anthony comes and says that he wants to steal Joanna away from Judge Turpin. And once he does it, is it okay for him to keep Joanna at the barbershop for a bit while he prepares for them to leave? Todd agrees because it's his daughter. I presume that's why. He'll be able to see her, see what she looks like, get her away from Judge Turpin. Not too long after, Signor Pirelli comes to pay Todd a visit, along, of course, with his assistant, Toby. He's being entertained by Mrs. Lovett, while Pirelli comes upstairs to talk to Mr. Todd. Because, you see, Pirelli isn't who he seems. One, he's not Italian. He's actually an Englishman. In his youth, used to work as an apprentice for Todd, back when his name was Benjamin Barker. He's come to blackmail Todd into giving him a portion of his earnings from his barbershop. Otherwise, he'll go to the judge or Beetle Bamford and say, he's back. He was exiled and he came back. Oh no. Now we as the audience know this isn't gonna end well because Todd's crazy. And so, in what must be an incredibly painful display of anger, Todd grabs a scalding hot iron kettle and just beats the crap out of the... If I had to say one thing that really doesn't make sense about this movie is that at no point did he say, ah, with his bare hands grabbing a cast iron kettle. But the rage was too strong. I think in the musical, because actually I've seen the musical as well, they mentioned like he didn't even care, it was hot, but he was like, this is more important. But they don't say nothing about that in the movie. And after that, we get the first actual kill of the movie about an hour in when, slits the throat of Pirelli, or whatever his actual name is. Now, when I've shown this movie to people, they're always like, ew, the blood looks so fake. Yeah, that's the point. The whole movie is unnaturally undersaturated. Everything's gray, everything's unfortunate, everything's just dark and gloomy and dystopian. But the only thing that is bright and saturated and in hypercolor is blood. Do y'all not know symbolism? The only thing that's a focus, the only thing that is hyper real is blood, is vengeance. But it is quite a gruesome scene. Soon thereafter, Judge Turpin comes in for his own shave. He's come to look his most attractive as he tries to appeal to Joanna. And Todd is like, finally, I'll finally have my revenge. I want to savor this. I want to remember why I'm here. And they both start to sing about pretty women. Todd is singing, of course, about the times of past, his wife, who is now no longer here. And Judge Turpin is, of course, singing about his ward, his beloved Joanna. Belting as they're savoring this moment, and Todd is ready to sink his blade into Judge Turpin's neck when, in an oh so dramatic turn of events, Anthony comes barging in talking about how he's gonna steal Joanna away, of which, of course, enrages the judge, and he leaves in a fury, and Todd is pissed. He goes on quite the chaotic rant where he goes back and forth between rage and sadness and rage and sadness. I haven't really touched on this. This movie is actually shockingly funny. As he goes on this just giant rant, eventually he just ends with his arms in the air like this. And Mrs. Lovett is like, all right, that's cool or whatever, but...
That's all very well, but what are we going to do about him?
Because they do still have the very real issue, so to speak, of Signor Pirelli's body being in a trunk. Mrs. Lovett, ever practical as always, says, hey, you know, Mrs. Mooney is over here cooking cats, all right? If she can make 5 pies with a cat, all right? If you're not getting where I'm going, they're gonna bake him. They're gonna turn him into a pie. This is a shockingly pragmatic business venture. What we should do have your little business up top, Todd. You do your little barbershop thing. Kill people, send them downstairs, and bake them into a pie. I mean, even if they suspect you, how would they know? The evidence is gone. I mean, just because I love this movie doesn't mean everything makes sense, because at some point, somebody would have been like, why is everyone dying when they go to the barbershop? But I digress. It's still a good movie. So business takes off. Who would have thought? That's the secret we needed. That's the secret ingredient. Business is taking off, but all these dead bodies, of course, are causing quite the stench. But people are assuming that it's a part of the sewer system, not like, you know, a whole heap of dead bodies. But the only person that is sitting here saying something is afoot is, of course, the crazy beggar woman. But business is booming, and Mrs. Lovett is so excited to start her new life with Mr. Todd. They're gonna get married. She's living in this beautiful world. Unfortunately, she's in love with him, growing in love with him, and he's focused on his revenge. And around this time, Toby starts to get suspicious of Mr. Todd. He doesn't think he's a good man, but he feels devoted to Mrs. Lovett because she kind of took him in after Signor Pirelli disappeared. I love how this child is the first person that noticed something is afoot. But he's like, something's off about Mr. Todd, but I will protect you if he ever tries to harm you, right? This is only further cemented by Toby noticing that Mrs. Lovett is now using Signor Pirelli's old coin purse. Conflicts her because now she's decided to put him down in the basement. We're kind of left to wonder why she put him down there, but that is unfortunately the only conclusion I can have, to just keep him there in the meantime until it's time for him to go because he's getting too suspicious. Okie dokie, we're at the final stages. We have Beetle Bamford that's coming back to check on the smell going around at the pie shop. Because he's an idiot, they're able to flatter him into getting a shave. Again, why more people don't know that everyone dies when they go here? Don't know, but he's like, okay. He dies and is of course thrown down into the basement, and that is the first body that Toby will ever see. Perhaps confirming some suspicions that he's had that this is not on the up and up, and he hides. Meanwhile, Anthony has saved Joanna from an asylum that she was put in by Judge Turpin. Judge Turpin put her there so that she would no longer be seen by any other man. The 1800s. Am I right? He successfully helps her escape, dresses her as a boy to hide her, and brings her to Sweeney Todd's barbershop for safekeeping until he can orchestrate everything for them to leave. While she's there, the crazy old woman before moseys her way up to the barbershop looking for Beetle Bamford because she saw him go in there, and she's like, this dude is killing people. But she's crazy, so nobody believes her, or they assume she's crazy, so no one believes her. Who returns? Sweeney Todd. And he heard that Sir Turpin is on his way looking for Joanna.
I know you, mister.
And so this chick needs to leave. This crazy chick needs to leave. So what does he do? He kills her with the swiftness and then sends her down below. And alas, the 15-year plan that Todd has had is finally brought to fruition, where he is able to stab him in the jugular so many times and finally enact his revenge on Sir Turpin. One thing he did not plan for, however, was that he had a witness. The boy that was hiding in a trunk in the same room nearly kills her, his own daughter, because we know that, he don't know that. He nearly kills his own daughter, but at the last minute, Mrs. Lovett screams, and he allows this person to live. I love this movie, but even that doesn't make sense because like, you've killed people quicker. Like, you could have just, you knew this person would never talk if you kill them, but he's like, forget my face. But yes, Mrs. Lovett is screaming, and it's because Judge Turpin, with his last energy, was grabbing onto her skirts. Todd has come downstairs. He says, open the oven, we'll throw him in. And while he's moving Judge Turpin's body, he notices the old beggar woman, and he sees her face for the first time. And that's when he realizes it's his wife, bitch. His dead wife. It ain't bitch. It's his whole ass wife. Her ass was alive this whole time. The whole reason he wanted revenge is because his wife died. Arguably, he wouldn't have even been that mad if his family was still around. He would have been mad, but like this mad? Maybe not. He would have maybe been able to live his life under a new assumed name, but this bitch was alive the whole time. You lied to me, Mrs. Lovett. And she's like, I said she took poison. I didn't say she died. And he said, and she's like, I did it because I love you and I wanted to be with you. I love this scene. I really do. Where he's like, come here. She's dead. It's whatever. Let's live together forever. And she's like, really? And they waltz and they dance. And she's under this very, very theatrical false sense of security until he hurls her into an open oven. Dead ass. That scene was stuck in my head it gave me nightmares, but I kept watching the movie. Todd goes back to his now deceased wife's body, holds her, cradles her, and up from the sewer comes Toby to kill Todd, and that's the movie. I said we were gonna be positive. Again, this movie by no means is perfect. I feel, is there such thing as like a perfect movie? I don't think so. I just love it so much. I've loved it for years. It's unfortunately a part of my childhood. Even as an adult, I watch it and I can't, the color choices, the costumes, the makeup, the arrangements, the songs. I can sing through the whole thing. It's just such a good movie. And I'm not even a musical lover. So the sheer fact that this is one of my favorite movies and I don't even like musicals says a lot. It's like a mixture of most major themes. It's scary, it's dramatic, it's musical, it's funny. Again, I don't think it'll be everyone's cup of tea, but it's always been a cup of mine. If you like this video, be sure to like this video. Follow me on all my social media, Instagram and Twitter, both of which are KennieJD. Next week, we're getting back to bad movies. So if you have any more bad movies to suggest, be sure to put those down in my comment section. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!